Hello and welcome back. This is Stuart with Persia Consulting Services, and this is Tips for Teaching number 2, Classroom Layout. Just very quickly, the reason we're doing this is I'm going to refer to some of these classroom layouts in future videos, so I just want to give you a very quick basic rundown of 4 major types of classroom layouts that you will see in the industry. Number 1 is teacher in the front of the room, and in this case we have a projector, desk, and computer at the front of the room, an actual podium that the teacher is teaching from, and the teacher is facing the students. From here you can see their faces, you can see if they're talking to each other, if they're looking at their computer screens, and if they're looking up at your projected image up in the front of the room. Those are all pros. Other things you see there listed as body language, whether they're intellectually engaged, etc. Some of the cons is you cannot see their computer screen, and if you don't do something that I will show you in a future video, it's called breaking the invisible wall or the fourth wall, then the students or you may feel isolated from each other. Sometimes it's hard to connect with the student at that point. Layout number 2 is called auditorium style, and this one is very similar to teacher in the front of the room. The biggest difference is that the desks or benches or whatever we have here are arranged in some kind of a semicircle around the teacher. And the other really big thing is that usually there are a lot more students in each classroom. In the lower left hand corner of the screen you will see a very large auditorium from a college. That sort of thing is very common in universities and such. 2 things to point out here are that if there is space, like in the upper right hand corner of the screen, the teacher can move around and actually keep some connection between the student and the teacher. But in the lower left hand corner it's very difficult to do, because if there is an aisleway, it looks like there might be an aisleway on this particular picture where the teacher can walk up and down, but otherwise they're kind of just sort of blocked off and isolated from the rest of the class, and that from a standpoint of keeping their interest and keeping them engaged in what they're doing, that can be a big problem. Listed here also you see that there's a low cost per student because you can put lots of students with only one instructor at the front. The cons are that lots of teachers associations and stuff are always talking about student to teacher ratios, and in this case it's terrible. One teacher with up to hundreds of students. Layout number 3 is exactly the opposite of what we've just been talking about. In this case, you see in the picture students with computers at their desk, and the teacher is in the back of the room. There's a podium back there with a computer and projector and everything the teacher needs in the back. And in this case, all of the pros and cons are 100% flipped, 180 degrees, and so the student can see their computers, they can see if they're on Facebook or checking their email, or if they're just generally browsing the internet or anything else, playing solitaire. Whereas from the front of the room you can't see that, and in this case from the back of the room you're teaching to the back of their head, and you don't really see this as the facial expression. A lot of their body language is hidden. But it's easier to keep them on track. You can look up and see if someone is stuck in some kind of exercise you're working on and they're having trouble. You can help them immediately because you can see what's going on. Whereas from the front of the room you may see, clear to the end of the exercise, you may notice that they were stuck back on step number 2, and that sometimes can be a big problem. So I've taught in this layout many times, and I kind of like it, But again, it has the pros and cons, and I totally agree with what's listed there. Now, layout number 4, from a purist standpoint, is actually the best layout to be using and working with, because most of the cons we've talked about are gone because you're right there side by side with the person you're working with. You may have one person on each side, and it's a very, very small classroom, but when I've worked like this, I get very high evaluations because you can be very interactive with the student and meet their needs and help them and have little side comments and conversations, and you can see whether they're engaged or not. And it's a very small classroom. They really don't have a chance to run off over the hill and be distracted like in some of the great big classrooms. And so you see here that there's a very high teacher to student ratio, 1-to-1, 1-to-2, as opposed to like an auditorium style. In this case, it's actually kind of expensive because of that high cost per student if you're looking from the salary of the teacher as some kind of an educational organization. But I think learning is very high most of the time in this kind of a layout. So we have several different layouts that we've talked about today. We had teacher in the front of the room, teacher in the back of the room, the auditorium style, and side by side. And I just wanted to list some quick image credits for where I got these pictures from. And please come visit purserconsulting.com or purserconsulting.blogspot.com. Thanks for watching.